to refresh myself, I think we're down to the last bill that we have tonight. It's an important one. And I must say before we get started, we've got approximately 30 people that will be on the line. So we're going to really have to hold our time limits for those of you who are calling in to just a couple of minutes, because that's all we need is that, do you support the bill or do you not support the bill? And we always read all of the written testimony that anybody gives us, and it can be found online on the state website and on the finance committee and documents. So everybody's input is important, but we will have to hold this to just a couple of minutes when you call in, okay?
Chairman.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I'd like to have
I would like to make sure that my good friend and floor leader, well, I'm not going to call his name, but Rep. Edwards is present, and I think you voted in favor on the holding the bills for further study, sir.
Yes, I did, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Before you get into the next bill.
Okay, yeah. All right. Here we go. Rep. Morales, please. Mm-hmm.
Chairman Abney and members of the committee, thank you again for the opportunity to discuss and consider House Bill 6026. In summary, this bill would require the State Investment Commission to identify state pension funds invested in military weapon manufacturers within 6 months of passage. Following this, the committee would have 8 months to sell, divest, or withdraw such state pension funds invested in these weapon manufacturers. For the purpose of this bill, military weapon manufacturers are defined as arms-producing companies or defense contractors that primarily produce guns, ammunition, missiles, military aircrafts, military vehicles, and military ships for the armed forces of a nation-state. Examples of some of these arms-producing companies include Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and General Dynamics. Please note, the following information to be shared is germane to the bill. Currently, our federal government allocates a budget of $738 billion for the military, with 1/3 of it being used for weapon systems. And that alone is more than we give to the Department of Veteran Affairs. Evidently, hundreds of billions of our federal tax dollars are used to subsidize weapons designed for military combat and war. Following this, the U.S. government will sell these weapons to different countries around the world, or we will use these weapons ourselves for warfare. While we do not see it in our everyday lives, the sales and use of these weapons have severe consequences, resulting in the destabilization of regions, the abuse of human rights, and a global arms race. Therefore, it is important that as a state, we are not enabling or financially supporting weapon manufacturers that derive their profit from military interventions, as it only contributes to a vicious cycle of violence. Instead, we should further invest such pension funds towards socially productive efforts such as climate resiliency, capital improvement bonds, e-commerce services, and medical technology designed to improve human life. Through the passage of this bill, we would also send a powerful message to our federal government about the need to reduce public spending on military weapons. After all, our state has done something like this before, as our state pension funds divested from assault-style gun manufacturers and private for-profit prisons just this past year. Now, as I close, I want to be clear. This is not estimated to harm the investment returns within our $8.7 billion state pension fund, as research has shown that pension funds invested in environmental, social, and governance funds, otherwise known as ESG funds, outperform pension funds invested in non-ESG funds. Lastly, this bill is not anti-military, nor does it pose a threat against our brave veterans, as this is a bill simply based on the principle that we should not be engaging in endless wars and using billions of our tax dollars for armed conflict, as it often hurts the most vulnerable while enriching weapon manufacturers. All that to say, we have a social and moral responsibility as a state to not be complacent with the status quo of publicly investing in military weapon manufacturers that unfortunately have contributed to much violence across the world. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Representative Morales. Thank you very much. Okay, so any questions of the sponsor? Yep, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Rep. Morales, for that kind conversation. I'm going to ask you, isn't it the job of the pension fund to get the best return on their investment to benefit the pensioners?
That is correct, and that is the purpose of the study commission, to understand how much are we putting towards military weapon manufacturers and what that return on investment is. Because there is an exception on the bill that if that return on investment is something significant, then the state investment commission can send a letter to the attorney general, the state house, and the governor stating why they will not be divesting from there. Those are the limited exceptions within the bill.
Okay, so your problem is with the military and the weapons that the military facilitates, is that correct?
Weapon manufacturers, correct.
Okay. When you look at, say, do you think McDonald's should be taken out of that as well? Because they've been known to get children hooked on salt and sugar, and, you know, we have a lot of obese children and health concerns. Would you suggest that we take McDonald's out of the pensioner funds too?
I am not equating diabetes
But there is a dichotomy to it. That's
to
why
the
I'm asking.
equivalency of, again, a global arms race and the fact that we are selling these weapons to other countries that then destabilize other regions.
Okay, I see Rep. Sylvan was, that's all here.
Yep. Representative DeBone.
Thanks, Chairman. Representative Morales, I get the intent of the bill and the idea of obviously lessen this arms race. I happen to be in the Coast Guard presently, and what we invest as a country is our military is an insurance policy that you're investing in the guarantee that your liberty, the liberty that we enjoy today, and we've been enjoying since the Revolutionary War and throughout all the wars, is that we are ready and we're prepared with the most sophisticated tools available. This country tends to dominate in that sense. And I hear you. I mean, nobody wants bloodshed. And I don't know how many atomic nuclear weapons we have, but they've only been utilized on 2 occasions, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? And you have to think of what that means. We have a ton of armament that we don't use, but in case we need it, it's ready. And therefore, I hear you. I understand where you're going, but that's the insurance policy that this country gives the world. We're ready. We're ready at any given time, and our troops are ready. They don't have to be training on the job. And so I think that because of the funding mechanisms to get to that point, I know it stinks, because somehow, some way, they have to get paid ahead of time, and our state is also an enterprise that has to bring in money. So it's a fine balance. I respect and appreciate your bill, but I think that we need to look further as to when we're divesting from something, how do we replace it and make sure that we don't hurt the national security at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You got it. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Representative Barros, and thank you for your service on the Coast Guard. So I do want to be clear, this act is not going to have an effect on the U.S. supply of military weapons. It just simply reduces the role and the contributions from our state. And again, that's the purpose of the study commission. And I'd be more than happy to add some amendment language to the bill, maybe just focusing strictly on the study commission itself and not an immediate divestment, because I think that's something that we do need to analyze. But again, I just think this bill is to get this conversation started.
Great. Any other questions? Nope. Representative, I thank you for your testimony, and I believe we got about 30 folks waiting on the phone. Yeah, 30 folks waiting on the phone to testify. If the clerk could ring them in and can hit the ground running. Hello, you are on live with House Finance. Hello, you're live with House Finance. If you could just introduce yourself, tell a little bit about the position you're taking, and just be nice and succinct. Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Alberto Bortoni, a student at Brown University. I speak today to give my full support for the Bill 6026 on divestment of state pension funds for military contractors. I believe our country the military complex has for a long time ceased to be a tool for safety and democracy and justice. Today, the military investment is a business opportunity that takes huge profits from the killing of communities of people, the destruction of their homes, and the destabilization of their nations. Our invested dollars have contributed to the largest refugee crisis in the recorded history. More than 80 million people, displaced people, virtually all of them are running away from bombs and bullets manufactured with our invested money. Our invested dollars go to the manufacture of cluster bombs. These weapons are deemed illegal by 150 nations. Their recent detonation in Yemen has been traced back to our state of Rhode Island. We choose to keep the manufacture of cluster bombs because investing in them returns huge profits. If this chaos, death, and destructions were to be happening in our land, our opinion will be different. If every bomb manufactured with Rhode Island's money were to be detonated in our communities, divestment will have occurred decades ago, regardless of how profitable it was. So in my opinion, the only reason we invest in military
30
complex
seconds.
is because the death which it brings is very far from our homes. Let's make our money give us strength by investing in things that empower our communities. The renewable energy sector alone is predicted to have bigger growth than the military in the coming decades. We should be an example to the rest of the country and to the world. We should show them that greatness can be achieved with peace and justice. Please support this bill, and we will be remembered. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you, Alberto. And then I forgot to say, when you hear the doorbell ring, so we give everybody 2 minutes to testify. If you would like additional information to be shared, you can provide written testimony that's viewed online. So once you hear the doorbell sound that one of our clerks does just once, it means it's a 30-second time limit. You can start wrapping up. Okay. We appreciate that. All right, great.
Well,
so thank you,
very
Alberto,
much.
again.
Thank you, bye-bye.
And next up, there we go. All right, hello. You are on House Finance. Introduce yourself. You got 2 minutes.
Hi. Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Andrew Poya. I'm a resident of Providence. I'm calling in support of Bill 6026 to divest our state pension from military contractors. I'm calling in support and hoping that those of you in the committee will support this bill. I'm 34 years old, and throughout my life we have been, there hasn't been a year that's gone by that we have not been attacking and bombing another country. And not only that, we spend more on war than any other country, and we spend more on war than all of our domestic funds combined in our federal budget. Additionally, we are also the #1 exporter of military weapons. And while I would like to see peace in my lifetime, I think that's something that would be great to see. And this problem seems so large, but this bill is something that can start getting us towards that path by showing that it is immoral to continually to invest our state funds in military contractors. So I really hope that everyone on the committee votes in favor of moving this to the full House. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Good.
Yep. All right, next up, hello, you are on with House Finance. If you could just introduce yourself and then talk for 2 minutes about your position on the bill.
Thank you. Yes, hi. My name is Greg Garrett. I live in Providence. I'd like to start with a quote from former President Dwight Eisenhower. It was, "Beware the military-industrial complex." The United States hasn't won a war in 50 years, and every time we lose a war, we seem to spend more and more money on this. And the blowback from our continuing spending has been horrendous. And, we just keep, using money to try to solve problems that would be better solved other ways. We're driving the famine in Yemen. We now have military contractors who spend huge amounts of money lobbying so that we can spend more money on weapons. Producing weapons produces fewer jobs per dollar than anything else. We definitely need to have a serious discussion in this country about the nature of militarism and what actually brings security to us. I also want to point out that divestment has been a very good strategy in the past. When people like myself pushed our state legislatures around the country to stop investing in South Africa, to divest from South Africa, that was how apartheid fell. Nowadays, people are using divestment, pushing banks to divest from fossil fuel facilities.
30 seconds.
Thank you. So we need to actually do this. We need to stop the military from lobbying. We need to stop them from revolving doors between the Pentagon and the defense contractors. And this would be a great message, and it would be a great way to start the conversation about the ridiculousness of militarism as the thing that runs this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Great job. All right, next up. We might have had a hang up. Okay. Hello, you are live with House Finance. Introduce yourself, talk about the bill for 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. My name is Catherine Hillary, and I'm from Newport, Rhode Island. I'm here to ask that you vote for H6026, which relates to the divestment of Rhode Island state pension funds from military spending and to reinvest that money into life-affirming companies. There is a terrible irony for members of pension funds and for all of us but a few corporations when our retirement money is dependent on the profits of weapons manufacturers, death and destruction. We ask that instead you focus on the global good rather than the ruthless corporate interests and demands of the war machine. There are bad actors in the world, and we do need a defense budget, but $740 billion a year is 3 times the amount necessary. Diplomacy and aid should be our response to global conflict, not militarism. We are at an amazing threshold right now where diplomacy and aid will be the responses of our U.S. government when fighting the 2 most serious enemies we all face all over the world, the pandemic, and there will be future pandemics, and global warming. We have no choice but to engage peacefully with every country in the world to save the planet. Both the COVID-19 virus and global warming, know no boundaries, borders, and while both pose existential threats to all of us, our own government is already planning to help other countries by offering surplus vaccines. Bill Gates and others are putting their entire focus on making sure there will be global cooperation through diplomacy and aid, with countries struggling to get all their people vaccinated and to take measures to get to a carbon zero worldwide by 2030.
All right, Catherine, that was the second doorbell. If you just a couple seconds to wrap up.
Okay, there are many, many opportunities for investing pension money in companies supporting these efforts to save the planet as opposed to destruction by war. As legislators in the great state of Rhode Island, you have a unique opportunity here with us, with this legislation, to be an example for other state pension funds. I urge you to get out in front of the tsunami of truth-telling that is happening now and will continue when it comes to revealing to the public the corruption of the corporate legislative war machine.
All right, thank you very much. Next up. Hello, you are online with House Finance. Introduce yourself, and you got 2 minutes to talk about if you support or oppose the bill. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Enrique Sanchez. I am here representing the BLM RI PAC and Providence Democratic Socialists of America. I am here in support of House Bill 6026 relating to public finance divestment of state pension funds from military contractors. I want to start out with a quote from a friend that just, I heard him recently state this. In the military world, when war is a business, peace is your enemy. I am going to approach this from a local, national, and transition into an international perspective. Here at the local government, local level, we have military contracting, manufacturing weapons companies like General Dynamics. Others include Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman, and other large manufacturing companies across the country who are making millions and millions and billions of dollars off of the war industry. If there is no conflict across the globe, then these people are not making money. A lot of our
30
manufacturing
seconds.
companies contribute to these injustice, evil tactics, strategies that the military-industrial complex contributes across the globe. We can do our part here by trying to divest local state pension funds from large military contractors. I understand that there is a large patriotism sentiment across the globe, across this country. I understand that there needs to be a military. I understand that we need to respect our military, but not when we are doing great damage and great harm to the world.
All right, that's the second doorbell. Just a couple of seconds to wrap up.
I am here in support of House Bill 6026, and thank you to Representative Morales and Henrys for introducing this bill. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I know you sped up at the end. I appreciate that. If you have any additional information you want to share, just post it on our website or send it to the clerk and they'll post it on the website. I know we have Representative Ella Wilkinson has just a brief numbers comment. Okay.
I just wanted to mention a few numbers with regards to the defense sector in the state of Rhode Island. Defense has supported 32,993 jobs, which is about 6.2% of our total employment. It's added $3.7 billion to the state's economic output, created $1.9 billion in income for Rhode Island households, and generated $105 million in tax revenues for the state of Rhode Island. So I just want to make sure that when we're looking at this bill that we do understand what the fiscal impact is that the defense sector has had within the state of Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we can just go through all the witnesses. I'm sure the witnesses are going to address any questions that they have with that. All right, next up. I think we have Peter Nightingale. Hello, you are on live with House Finance. If you introduce yourself, talk about the bill. If you support or oppose it for 2 minutes, you hear a doorbell, 30 seconds left.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, yep.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm Peter Nightingale. I am a professor of physics at the University of Rhode Island, and I am testifying on behalf of the coordinating committee of the Poor People's Campaign in Rhode Island. This is a network of individuals, of congregations, of community organizations, and we're all committed to lifting up and deepening the leadership of those who are most affected by the following injustices. Systemic racism, that's number one. Poverty and inequality, that's number two. The war economy and militarism, number three. And ecological devastation. We support the divestment bill because it would be a major step towards the realization of the demands of the Poor People's Campaign and a national call for moral revival. As to ecological devastation, I think that you probably have heard that the military is the biggest global institutional emitter of greenhouse gases. As far as the war economy and militarism is concerned, these issues contribute enormously to global violence and to violence.
30 seconds.
The war economy and militarism also contribute to the spread of violence, oppression, and deaths both at home and abroad. Poverty is the cause of the premature death of 250,000 people in the U.S. every year. The military drains the resources, and we won't be silent anymore, as we say in the campaign. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up.
Any questions?
No questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, hello, you are live on House Finance. You get 2 minutes to talk about the bill and the position. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'm on right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is Jonathan Daly LaBelle. I'm in South Kingstown, and I'm calling in support of House Bill 6026. I also want to just say that I'm very pleased with this process that you have, letting people call in during these COVID times that are so challenging. So I'm part of an effort, no endless war or excessive militarism. We haven't done anything during these COVID times, but we were being out in corners, busy corners around the state, trying to build awareness to reduce militarism and to reduce military sales conflicts around the world. We've been in front of our congresspeople's offices, and I can tell you that as people drive by, we get probably, I wouldn't put a percentage on it, but we get far more positive support than we do negative support. To answer one of the representatives' questions in the hearing, we have 5,800 nuclear weapons. It does seem a bit excessive.
30 seconds.
And I just want to also bring forward that in the early 90s, at the very late 80s and early 90s, we did start to flatten the curve, so to speak, of military spending and militarism. We started to reduce our military footprint. Unfortunately, that changed in 2001, but we have corrected the curve. I think we can do it again. It has to be thoughtful. We can reinvest into more productive means. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And you know what? Thank you. You're part of the committee process, so thank you for hanging in there and calling in, getting your voice heard. Next up.
Excellent. Thanks.
Hello, you are live on House Finance. Introduce yourself, say if you support the bill, talk for 2 minutes or less.
All right. Very good. Hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Nidell-Gresh, and I am the Democratic State Committee woman for District 40, which I represent Foster, Gloucester. Today, I'm giving testimony in favor of House Bill 6206, sponsored by House Rep. David Morales and Representative Henrys. I'll be brief. Rhode Island is in a unique position to divest public pensions from the military-industrial complex. We are small enough where divesting will not negatively impact state employees, and at the same time will make a statement that this predominantly Democratic state will focus on investing in corporations that are not morally, socially, and environmentally irresponsible. Investing in companies such as Raytheon and Electric Boat, which make billions of dollars a year, is simply not ethical. Rhode Island divesting will also send a message to Congress and to the new administration, as well as Secretary Raimondo. The military-industrial complex already receives billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies, plus millions of dollars goes to cleaning up environmental brown zones caused by pollution from bases, ammunition, and other toxins, including the Car Point in Newport, Rhode Island. Pension investments should be used for the better good to invest in improving lives by removing investments from the military. Hello?
30 seconds. The bell means it's 30 seconds left to testify.
That's all I'm doing. By removing investments from the military-industrial complex, as we did with gun manufacturers, we will have more flexibility to invest in green energy initiatives, socially responsible companies, and in general, a more diversified portfolio for all state employees to choose from. On behalf of State Committee members David Oppenheimer, District 32, North Kingstown, and Jay Brooks, District 59, Pawtucket, we urge you to support this bill.
Great. Thank you very much. Next
Thank
up.
you.
Hello, you are on with House Finance. If you could just introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes to talk about if you support or oppose the bill. Go right ahead.
All right. My name is Kaylin Pauley. I am a constituent of Senator Anderson and Representative Bennett, a member of District 31's Democratic Senate Committee, and a community organizer. I'm speaking in support of 6026 because I believe we can divest from violence and destruction while showing the rest of the U.S. that we need to sharply reduce investment in military weapons. With this divestment, we can also make the decision to invest in more productive areas that help Rhode Islanders and our economic growth, such as education, health, and climate resiliency. I strongly urge you to consider the legislation's positive societal impacts and support it moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up.
That was quick.
Hello, you are on live with House Finance. If you could just introduce yourself and say if you support or oppose the bill, and you have 2 minutes to talk about it. 2 minutes or less.
Okay, thanks. I'm Nancy Houston, clerk of the FCNL advocacy team, testifying in support of the bill to divest Rhode Island's pension funds from military weapons manufacturers. Our advocacy team is one of over 120 such teams of citizen lobbyists across the country, advised by the Friends Committee on National Legislation, the oldest religiously based lobbying group in D.C. FCNL seeks a world free of war and the threat of war, a society with equity and justice for all, a community where every person's potential may be fulfilled and an earth restored. Where we invest and spend our money shows our priorities. We wish to prioritize life-affirming corporations. Passage of this bill would advance the larger issue of reducing U.S. militarism. Passing it would show that Rhode Island prioritizes diplomacy, human rights, human life, and the health of our planet over the profits of weapons manufacturers. It would also educate the public on the role of military weapons contractors play in keeping our country on a continuous war footing through tax breaks, lobbying largesse, weapons sales, and ever-increasing military budgets. It's my hope that in passing this bill, we can forge a broader definition of defense, a definition that includes the health and well-being of all the citizens of this state and our nation. As President Eisenhower stated, every gun made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Thank you.
Next, David, are you on the line? Okay, thank you.
Stated, every gun made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies a theft from those who hunger and are not fed.
Excuse me, David, would you please turn down the volume on your...
I did.
Okay, great. Okay, the time is yours.
My name is David Oppenheimer. I'm a Democratic State Committee person from North Kingstown and the lead organizer for Action Corps Rhode Island. And my main argument is simple. It's that Rhode Island can find a better, less harmful way to invest its pension fund. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about two specific places that demonstrate the horrible consequences that have been the result of military weapons sales, intended or unintended. The first one is in Yemen, where recent weapons sales to the Saudi Arabia-UAE coalition as part of their war on Yemen has resulted in the unconscionable and all too common targeting of civilian targets. This includes weddings, hospitals, dams, food storage depots. In the summer of 2018, a school bus full of children. In August of 2018, a Lockheed Martin missile made in the U.S., fired from a U.S.-made plane, killed 11 adults and 40 schoolboys under the age of 12, maiming many more. And from 2015 to 2019, 73% of Saudi Arabia's arms imports came from the U.S. The arms didn't stay in the hands of Saudi and UAE coalition. Information released in 2019 showed how arms were found in the hands of Al-Qaeda militia and Salafi militia, and even in the hands of the Houthis, which is on the side that we're fighting. And secondly, in southern Yemen, with the part of Yemen that's on our side, you have militia
That's 30
fighting each
seconds,
other.
David. Please wrap it up.
Yep, so I'm going to wrap it up. The last point is that in this hemisphere, in Central America, in Mexico, and in the Northern Triangle, the ATF has found that 70% of the guns seized from criminals in Mexico came from the U.S. 41% of the guns from the Northern Triangle, 50% in El Salvador. So many of the people who are now fleeing to our southern border to get away from violence are actually fleeing U.S.-made weapons that have found their way legally or illegally into Latin America. And that's why I say there are better, less harmful ways the state of Rhode Island can invest its pension fund money. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, David. Our next speaker is going to be Nina Wolfe Lando. You're on the air, Nina, with the Finance Committee. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Nina Wolfe Lando. I am a Providence resident. I am here today to support House Bill 6026. I am a longtime student of environmental studies and climate activist. We know there's so many important investments to be made across the state for housing and food and environmental protection. And this bill makes it really clear an important statement for peace. And it shows that we as Rhode Islanders are prioritizing investments in the social good and are willing to act to end support for military corporations who really undermine our democracy with lobbying and produce really violent results in terms of death and destruction. We also know from a lot of research that investments can really yield high returns when we're investing in things that are not producing death and destruction, and there's not going to be a negative impact for all of the folks who contribute to the Rhode Island state pension funds. And in fact, Rhode Island legislators have a precedent for these actions with the divestment from civilian assault-style gun manufacturers and private for-profit prisons last year. This initiative is a really important continuation of this work, and I really encourage all the legislators to support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Landau. Our next speaker is Nancy Hood. You're on the air with the Finance Committee, Nancy. Please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Nancy Hood. I live at 274 Wood Street in Bristol, Rhode Island. I'm here on behalf of East Bay Citizens for Peace to express our support of H6026. East Bay Citizens for Peace is a grassroots organization made up primarily of individuals from the East Bay area. We formed 18 years ago in response to the impending U.S. invasion of Iraq and are committed to peaceful solutions to conflict through the promotion of open, respectful dialogue. We hold monthly vigils for peace and justice, sponsor public forums, and lobby Congress. 18 years ago, 100 people showed up for our first vigil in snowy downtown Bristol to say no to a U.S.-led invasion of Iraq. Our nation was already engaged in a misguided war in Afghanistan. Among us were veterans, a former member of the State Department, and a retired war correspondent. We questioned the existence of weapons of mass destruction, urged UN inspections and diplomacy, and predicted that if the U.S. invaded Iraq without justification and provocation, we would not only violate international law and set dangerous precedent, but we would risk catastrophic destabilization in the Middle East and horrific suffering. Sadly, our worst fears have come to pass. Year after year, we in East Bay Citizens for Peace have continued to speak out against militarism, while our government has continued military presence in Iraq and Afghanistan and increased U.S. involvement in endless war with military conflicts now in 76 nations. More than half the U.S. discretionary budget is allocated to the Pentagon, much to the benefit of military contractors. While the weapons industry has profited, military spending has left our country woefully unprepared for this pandemic that has resulted in the loss of over half a million
Please
lives.
wrap it up, Ms. Hood.
I'm sorry?
Please wrap it up. That was your
I am.
30-second. Okay.
During this current fiscal year, U.S. military weaponry around the world topped $175 billion. In contrast, the U.S. ranks 37th in healthcare, according to World Health Organization. Words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ring all too true. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. What can we do? In Rhode Island, we can withdraw our support of the weapon industry and invest in industries that contribute to the well-being of society and planet. We can support H6026. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, ma'am. Our next speaker is going to be Kirk Robinson. Mr. Robinson, you're on with the Finance Committee. Go ahead, please, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking my call. My name is Kirk Robinson. I am a resident here in Providence, Rhode Island, testifying tonight, in support of H6026. I just want to thank Representatives Morales and Henrys for introducing this very important piece of legislation. So I'm in support of it, and I just want to explain just for a quick moment why. This is an opportunity to address Rhode Island's role in ongoing overt and probably covert imperial projects. Specifically, when having pension funds that are tied to military contractors, in essence, we're kind of tacitly endorsing the kinds of work that military contractors do. It just makes me deeply uncomfortable. As somebody who cares a great deal about sort of affairs abroad, I kind of think of the current crisis in Yemen right now, the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. Starvation on levels that are inhumane. Oh, well, any starvation is inhumane, but on the levels that have been reported. And then I think about the current Democratic majority in Washington right now, who are against that. And they tried to even, almost with bipartisanship pressure, then President Trump to stop those affairs. And so, I use that as an example because Rhode Island having any role financially to those kinds of things really is deeply upsetting. And I think it would be a great idea to identify and divest pension fund investments. And it seems like this act would do that. And like I said, I'm in full support of it, and I'm grateful to Representatives Morales and Henrys for bringing something like this to the committee. So that's really all I have to say. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Robinson. Our next witness will be Tal Frieden. You're on the air with the Finance Committee. Go ahead and testify, please.
Hi, my name is Tal Frieden, and I work for Demand Progress, a nationwide anti-war and anti-austerity organization that has worked on campaigns against U.S. militarism across the globe, in Rhode Island and in D.C. I am calling to testify in favor of House Bill 6026 to end Rhode Island's investments in the military-industrial complex. We've seen and heard the consequences of militarism for decades. Now, in the pandemic, we see the costs of investing in the military-industrial complex at the expense of public services. Hospitals are over capacity and turning sick people away. We've seen PPE shortages and a slow-starting vaccine rollout. Abroad, we continue to hear of the catastrophes of U.S. intervention as the military-industrial complex continues to truck along. I want to share the testimony that went somewhat, that made headlines in 2013 when a family from Pakistan testified in front of Congress about the effects of the U.S. military's drone program in Pakistan. Zubair was 13 years old when he testified in D.C. about how his mother was murdered in a U.S. drone strike earlier
30
that
seconds.
year. He said, tears streaming down his face, "Now I prefer cloudy days when the drones don't fly. When the sky brightens and becomes blue, the drones return, and so does the fear. Children don't play so often now and have stopped going to school. Education isn't possible as long as the drones circle overhead. The costs of U.S. intervention are innumerable. Countless others have stories like Zubair's. In Syria, millions have been displaced from their homes for years. In Iraq, over 1 million have died. In Afghanistan, children have lost years of school. And in Yemen, millions go hungry. While Biden has started the process of ending weapons sales to the war in Yemen, Rhode Island needs to do its part as well by divesting from military contractors. Rhode Island has already divested our pension funds from gun manufacturers and private prisons, which is an important start. But if we want a state that invests in hope and not fear, we must divest from military contractors as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Kylie Dixon. Kylie, you're on the air with the Finance Committee. Go ahead with your testimony, please.
Hi, my name is Kylie Dixon, and I'm here to support Bill 6026. It's become increasingly obvious that the United States is, as it is, a war machine and is less interested in human rights than it is in oil and riches. U.S. security policy since 9/11 is notorious for failure. We've spent nearly 2 decades bombing and destabilizing and plundering, and unsurprisingly, the Middle East is no better for it. The war in Afghanistan failed to reach its political goals. The 2003 invasion of Iraq ranks among the worst U.S. foreign policy mistakes. Syria is still a mess, and Nadeau's intervention in Libya produced a failed state that serves as a hub for human trafficking and a haven for terrorists. All this is terrible, right? So why should we continue to pump the majority of our national spending into it, especially when so many of our own citizens are dying? All this money funneled into endless war and destruction, for what? To line the pockets of war hawks, lobbyists, these corporations, while so many suffer. We are better than this, and I believe that we can change it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Dixon. Next is Randall Rice. You're on the air with the Finance Committee, Mr. Rice. Go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Randy Rice. I work in the Treasurer's office, and I'm testifying on behalf of Treasurer Magaziner, and I thank the committee for the opportunity to testify on 6026. Treasurer Magaziner is the chair of the State Investment Commission, which is comprised of investment professionals who oversee the assets of the pension system. That commission has the fiduciary responsibility to prioritize the retirement security of our 60,000 members, who include teachers, nurses, first responders, and other members of the pension system who have spent their careers serving others. Strong investment returns are crucial to ensure that the state can reliably deliver pension benefits to those 60,000 members who have earned those benefits over the course of their career. In 2020, the pension fund reached an all-time high with $9.495 billion in assets, and for the third year, we outperformed our peers. In fact, we outperformed 87% of large public pension funds nationally. That continued strong performance is crucial to ensuring that our pension system reach a healthy funding status so that we can ensure return of cost of living adjustments to our retirees. The default position of our office is to oppose any legislation that would restrict the ability of the State Investment Commission to use its judgment to deliver the strongest possible adjusted returns for the pension system. The Commission considers material, environmental, social, and governance risks when making investments decisions for the pension system. Last year, as noted, the Commission voted to end the pension systems invested in companies that manufacture assault weapons for civilian use and those companies who operate for-profit prisons. Those investment decisions were made following careful analysis by the investment experts on the Commission and Treasury staff to ensure that they were in the best interest of the members of the pension fund. As noted, the defense and aerospace industry is a huge part of our U.S. stock market and includes General Dynamics.
Please wrap it up, Mr. Rice.
You bet. Removing the Investment Commission's authority to make investment decisions while also significantly limiting investment options would pose risks to the pension system and its members. And for that reason, we cannot support H6026, but we would be happy to engage with the sponsors to advocate for a more peaceful world. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Rice. Our next witness is going to be Mr. Miguel Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez, you're online with the Finance Committee. You may proceed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Hi, good evening, members of the Finance Committee. My name is Miguel Sanchez. I'm here as a Providence resident, community advocate to testify in support of Bill 6026. First, I would like to thank Representatives Morales and Henrys for sponsoring this important piece of legislation. I believe that we need to move money away from corporations whose main business is violence, death, and destruction. This divestment would take action to reduce the violent global conflict and slow the hyper-militarization of our world by divesting from the military-industrial complex. This act would allow us to redirect our investment dollars towards socially productive companies that address vital societal assets like health and education. Diverting investment funds towards companies with positive environmental and social ratings will improve societal investments in sustainable energy, modernizing our crumbling infrastructure, and public transit. This divestment focuses on the public good rather than corporate interests and demands. This bill would send a message to the U.S. Congress that we need to sharply reduce our investment in our military-industrial complex. I would like to end this testimony with a Havelock Ellis quote. There is nothing that war has ever achieved that we could not better achieve about it. Thank you for your time, committee members.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Sanchez. Our next witness will be Leslie William T. Robinson. You're on the air with the Finance Committee. Proceed, please.
Hello, committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of 6026. My family and I live in the great state of Rhode Island and strongly believe in this initiative. I support 6026 for many reasons. Less Rhode Island state resources that go to supporting the weapons manufacturers is for the good. These merchants of death sow violence and destruction, environmental catastrophe, bleach off the public purse and spend our money on their multi-million-dollar CEO salaries, worsening inequality, and corrupt our democracy with their lobbying using our money. You only have to look at the worst humanitarian crisis on earth in Yemen to see the role U.S. weapons makers are playing in Raytheon, making us all complicit. But above all, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by turning away from this long list of devastation. The Forum for Sustainable and Responsible Investment, in addressing the performance of sustainable investment, recently cited 15 authoritative investment industry research studies that show that investors, and I quote, do not have to pay more to align their investments with their values or to avoid companies with poor, and it's important, environmental, social, or governance practices, of which weapons manufacturers fit into. More so, investing while...
Go ahead, continue. You have 30 seconds to wrap up.
Sorry. Okay. More so, investing while respecting the social good delivers results that outperform, provide stability, and encourage strong downside protection, especially during social and economic crisis like we're in now. But we don't have to just ask me. The Rhode Island State Treasurer, Seth Magaziner, who established a career as a Vice President at Trillium Asset Management, an investment firm that specializes in socially responsible investing for a better world, before he took the helm of the Treasury.
Please wrap it up.
Okay. The good people of Rhode Island can do the right thing for a better and saner world and benefit financially from it. I hope that the committee will get behind this important initiative and support it into law. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night. Our next witness is Ms. Linda Stevens. Ms. Stevens, you're on the air with the Finance Committee.
Hi, yes, thank you. Linda Stevens, North Kingstown. I support this bill, and I'd like to make a statement about the environmental impacts of the military. Recent research has shown that the U.S. military is one of the largest climate polluters in history. Its consumption of liquid fuel and CO2 equivalent emissions are equal to or greater than most countries. The Defense Department remains the world's largest single consumer of oil and one of the world's top emitters of greenhouse gases. It produces more hazardous waste than the 5 largest chemical companies combined. As a longtime Rhode Islander who is happy to live in a state with clean air, clean water, and beautiful landscapes and waterways, I urge you to consider this bill to reroute funds to industries that could help preserve our environment and protect Rhode Islanders' quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stevens. Our next witness is Ms. Lisa Petrie. Ms. Petrie, you're on the air with the Finance Committee. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks. Hello, my name is Lisa Petrie, and I'm a stay-at-home mom and a climate activist. I'm calling in support of this bill. A pension fund is there to secure the future for workers so they can live comfortably and with dignity in the latter part of their lives. So a pension is forward-looking. It's about the future, and it's about providing safety and stability. But we now realize that those same funds that give Rhode Islanders safety, stability, and comfort here at home are causing death, chaos, and unspeakable hardship in other parts of the world. And what if those same funds are destabilizing our world in the long run and confining those pensioners' children and grandchildren to a future marked by calamity and violence? To be clear, this bill isn't about disinvesting from our soldiers or the equipment and supplies that they need, nor will it make us less safe. Rather, it's targeting the corporations that produce ever more deadly weapons, weapons that we don't need, and often weapons that even the Pentagon didn't ask for, that are requested by congresspeople as pork projects for their home states. The U.S. military budget of $732 billion is $6 billion more than the next 10 countries combined, and 3 times as much as the next biggest spender, China.
30 seconds.
Okay. We spend 10 times as much as the third highest, India, and 11 times as much as Russia. And compared to the countries most often cited as threats to our security, Iran and North Korea, we spend about 49 times as much as Iran and over 170 times as much as North Korea. By what metric does this make sense? It's clear that either U.S. military spending is incredibly inefficient or we have a lot more weapons than we need. It's time to disinvest from this overgrown industry and reinvest in the things that will really make us safe, like climate action and climate adaptation and healthcare and education, a safe and stable future for our families and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petrie. Our next witness is Patricia Fonts. Ms. Fonts, you're on the line with the Finance Committee. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. My name is Patricia Fonts, and I live in Hopkinton, Rhode Island. Look, a month ago or so, I telephoned the Office of the International Committee Against Nuclear Weapons to get some information about the countries which have ratified that treaty. As I explained the type of support for the treaty that the Rhode Island Anti-War Committee was planning, the person in the U.S. Office of ICANN at the UN made the following statement. Yes, we know about the actions in Providence against Textron's manufacture of cluster bombs. This was a few years ago, and how they were effective in influencing Textron's decision to give up manufacturing them. We often use that example as a way of encouraging the hope that the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons will have a similar effect. Well, I was surprised and delighted to know that anybody in the U.S. office at the UN knew about the Providence experience. I don't know a more powerful example of how an action by relatively small groups in Rhode Island could have a national and an international impact like that. ICANN is in Switzerland, and they know Providence. Imagine then that the impact that your decision today, an action by a Rhode Island House of Representatives Finance Committee, can have on the national and international movements for the divestment of state pension funds from arms manufacturing industries, and in the long run from the carrying out of wars which use those arms. Don't be afraid of repercussions from the power mongers high in the party structures in Rhode Island. Be a profile in courage. Be a peacemaker. Take one small step for humankind. Vote yes and pass H6026 onto the floor of the House. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Fontes. Our next witness is Mr. Timothy Sproles. Mr. Sproles, you're on the line with the Finance Committee. Proceed with your testimony, sir.
Thank you. My name is Timothy Sproles. I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill number 6026. I'm a member of the Rhode Island Anti-War Committee. The enormous amount of resources that our country devotes to arms production leaves that much less for other needs. Education, the alleviation of poverty, and health and medical care are much more deserving of our government's attention and spending. Through this bill, Rhode Islanders are giving voice to their desire to direct our government's priorities away from unending conflict and towards cooperation with the world's peoples and fulfilling human needs of health, food security, and a renewable energy policy. Whenever a conflict breaks out somewhere in the world, the U.S. government chooses a side and then pours in weapons and often American troops. This strategy only exacerbates the problems and has ruined many nations and brought great suffering to their populations. Our intervention in Libya and Iraq are only two examples in which have ruined those countries and caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. It's difficult for American citizens to change Washington's mindset, which is heavily influenced by a network of lobbyists and donors tied to the weapons industry, which contributes millions of dollars to political campaigns.
30 seconds to wrap up.
And spends billions of dollars on lobbying Congress. House Bill number 6026 will allow Rhode Islanders to stand up and say no to the status quo. Aiding, abetting, and instigating military conflicts is not the way forward. Cooperation on a world scale is what will be needed to deal with the 21st century problems of climate change, poverty, and future pandemics. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Sproles. Our next witness is Mr. Barry R. Brown. Mr. Brown, you're online with the Finance Committee. Go ahead with your testimony, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to offer my support for House Bill 6026. I speak as a 4-year Navy veteran, having served aboard ships during the Vietnam War. Also, I'm the son of an Army infantryman who served in the Pacific during World War II. It's my belief that the U.S. defense budget today is a relic of an era long past, a time when both conventional and non-conventional weapons certainly had relevance. While I'm certainly not an expert on the issue of national defense, I'm a reasonable and practical person. I believe that spending billions of dollars on these weapons is misguided. Even a fraction of those funds could be better spent on a host of critical issues that plague our state and our nation, things like income inequality, education, the environment, infrastructure, and so on. From the most recent solar winds hack via the Russians, it's clear that our greatest threat is not from conventional or nuclear weapons, but a cyber attack that, if history is correct, may find us ill-prepared and vulnerable to disasters that we cannot even imagine. Submarines and aircraft carriers, and I actually served on an aircraft carrier for a year in 1970, will not protect us against the disaster and chaos that would ensue from yet another major cyber attack. I'm very aware of the financial role that the defense industry plays in the state of Rhode Island, and I'm sensitive to that. This makes political support for the divestment bill difficult at best.
30
But
seconds.
even when the truth is both challenging and uncomfortable, it still needs to be listened to and heeded.
Is that the end of your testimony, Mr. Brown?
It is. It is. Thank you
for
for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for your testimony this evening, sir. Our final witness this evening is Mr. Stephen R. Schwartz. Mr. Schwartz, you're online with the Finance Committee. You can proceed, sir.
Thank you very much. Hi, this is Steve Schwartz. Thanks for letting me speak in favor of 6026. I clerk the Peace and Social Action Committee at the Providence Friends Quaker meeting. And it's my sense in general that war is wrong and a bad idea. And my business background has taught me that efficiency is very important. I understand that cuts in defense spending raise concerns about being dangerous, and a couple of people have spoken on that, so I'm not going to give the details. There's a man named Frank Kaplan who wrote a book and was recently interviewed on NPR, and you can find that information in the written notice that I sent. He did a history of nuclear war, and he said throughout the late 50s, Air Force intelligence was saying the Russians were way ahead of us. By the early 60s, they're going to have 500 ICBMs, so we need a crash program in ICBMs too. And so they did that. And when Kennedy got into office, the Discoverer satellite just started taking pictures from outer space. They found that the Soviet Union had 4 ICBMs, not 4 or 500, 4. So there was a missile gap, but they were way ahead. We were way ahead, and yet the Air Force kept pushing for more and more missiles because, eventually they'll have some. A person working in the Pentagon was sitting in on Strategic Air Commands. He found extraordinary excess. 500 1-megaton nuclear weapons aimed at Moscow, 17 at a defunct place in the Arctic Circle, tons of this kind of stuff. As a business person, I myself think about how to use capital resources. Do I want to buy a fast, expensive machine, or do I want to do some research and find out how to gain the trust of my customers? What if our government said take half of that military spending and spend $300 billion a year on free hospitals and schools everywhere around the world? That might lessen tensions, might even make it less needy for the seemingly excessive spending mentioned by Mr. Kaplan. And how do we get the federal government to consider different options? One way is to show our displeasure any way we can. And 6026 is one way Rhode Island can do that. From a Quaker viewpoint, this should be done on moral terms. In our government's function, the effectiveness of spending is a language that's better understood. And the message that we don't want to invest in such poor judgment and management is one step in that direction. I'm aware of the needs, but I was a little disappointed in Mr. Magaziner's message about investing. He didn't tell us whether the military part of his investments were doing better or worse. He just sort of raised the threat that it could be a problem. So I'd be interested in hearing some better details about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Schwartz. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the list of witnesses.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the teamwork and the help that you gave, and that Vice Chair Mazurkowski gave, and always Vice Chair Slater. It's good. It's good teamwork, and the sponsor of the bill. It takes a lot of courage to bring these kind of bills up, but I also thank all of the people who testified tonight, because your voice is going to be heard in Finance Committee no matter which way a bill goes, but it's important that we go through this particular process. So I want to thank the sponsor. I want to thank the members of the Finance Committee. So that would close then the hearing on Bill 6026 if there were no further questions of the sponsor. If there are no further questions of the sponsor, thank you for everything you've done tonight, and that should end the business of the Finance Committee. Thank you.